Hey guys, welcome to the Perfectly Wasted podcast. I'm the host, DullOxide. Today is episode 69 on the internet. You can find all my previous episodes on the Drinking Wisemen YouTube channel, along with my sporadic podcast, Brew the Truth, any day-to-day photos, cat photos, cosplay photos on my Instagram, at DullOxide. So, as everyone knows by now, the internet is a series of tubes. But not really. It's a decent comparison for some things, and for other things, it's really a bad comparison. And if you don't know what the internet is, then that's okay. Not everyone really understands the internet. I'm not expecting everyone to fully understand it, but I wanted to talk about the internet today because it seems like it's a day-to-day portion of most people's lives these days. So, everyone pretty much has some kind of smart device that they go on that they're able to get access to the internet, or they have it at work or through their school or any number of other means do you have access to the internet. And it basically interconnects pretty much the entire world at this time. So if you have access to the internet, then there's a lot of things that are out there that just kind of float around that are news articles that are not really that great. So if you have access to the internet, then chances are you have access to millions and millions of news articles. Now, what's interesting about this is that, back in the past when they used to write articles, obviously they had a lot of different sources that were a little bit more solid than we might have today. A lot of people reference the internet as a viable source for a lot of different news articles and stories and reports and any number of other things that you could ever imagine. But unfortunately, the credibility of these sources is not extraordinarily high unless you're researching it yourself, specifically finding information as your person, as yourself, and publishing this inside of some kind of meaningful way that you can show that you actually have done the research, then a lot of information on the internet isn't really a reliable source, unfortunately, which I know a lot of people understand. But what's interesting about this now is that most people these days seem to just kind of take it for face value. They see a news article saying, hey, if I'll eat this, I'll live until I'm 110. Or if I take this and cut it out of my diet, then it's going to make me lose 100 pounds over the next year. Well, that's not necessarily true, and obviously there's stuff that's made up, there's misinformation everywhere, there's this fake news that we keep hearing about, and of course there actually is actual fake news, alright? So, now, while I understand that the president makes a big fuss about a lot of things, there is such a thing as misinformation, and it happens all the time. That being said, do I think the things that people claim are fake news are fake news? No, that's not necessarily true either. Some stuff that is just kind of like make-believe shit is just told to us through the media, and we just believe it because it's easier to believe than it is to do the research yourself or to do any number of other things to uncover the truth. So, now with all these things being the case, I think that it's pretty hard to basically cut the internet out of our everyday lives. It's practically impossible. In fact, it's one of my top 3 things that I have to have if I were going to move anywhere. What were we doing when we were younger, when we didn't have internet? The internet wasn't always around, at least in my childhood. I didn't have internet. So we used to go outside and play with friends. We used to read news articles in newspapers or in magazines or in any number of other outlets that we were able to read through. We read books. We had to do research in libraries that were actual brick and mortar libraries. So nowadays a lot of stuff kind of gets a little bit diluted, and it's not really that great anymore. For if I want to go read news, I find a lot of local news articles that are about just nonsense and bullshit that I don't care about. My Facebook feeds are always flooded with different recipes of certain things, news articles that are very, very highly modified to be one specific portion of a story that really doesn't tell the whole story, or ones that are very specifically attacking people, like any person that you could ever imagine, whether it be by their race, whether it be by their intelligence level, by how they were brought up, by the country they were born in, or any number of other factors. There are news articles that are out there about everything, and a lot of them are really shitty news articles, so it's just, since it is hugely important thing in most people's lives these days that connects such a large portion of the world together, I'm really surprised that there is no quality check, no QC on this kind of thing, you know? Like, obviously there are editors for these newspapers and these online article locations, you know, wherever you might want to read things. It just seems like a lot of things that are on the internet these days, it's just people trying to make like a quick buck. And there are just so much nonsense that's out there that a lot of people don't realize isn't real news because they just don't know what real news is these days. You know, back in the day when we used to read newspapers or any other paper article, you know, that was all we had. That was the only thing that we knew, you know, and that was how we got news. So we took that and rewrote it, and we decided whether or not that was worthy news. And you could write to the editor or any number of other ways to communicate to the paper to let them know that you think it's a bogus article. And they might have to write a retraction or any number of other ways to appease their audience. And these days, it just seems like the internet, if you could just post a funny video of some kind or, you know, make a video viral in some way or post about a cat or a dog or an animal of some kind doing some cute act, basically you're saved. You know, if you have an informative video, then maybe you're able to get a bunch of people to watch it and maybe you get some kind of feedback on it. But I mean, honestly, it all comes down to how good the content of your video or your news article or your post or whatever you want to call it is. And these days I feel like there's such a lack in writer integrity and by content creator integrity that it really just kind of hurts everyone. And I do see a lot of these, you know, viral post pages that are just basically throwing up whatever they think people will pay them for and what people are paying them for. And unfortunately, that just dilutes all of the other stories that are out there. And if you look at them, there's just a lot of nonsense out there. You know, like, I don't really need to know what's happening between the lawsuit between like Apple and Samsung. That's been around for fucking ever. It's not great news. I don't need to know Donald Trump poured a bunch of food into a koi pond. You know, I don't need to know these kind of things because all this is just kind of like, it's just news that is just there to be news. The important things aren't being reported on. It's just being filled. You're just getting all this filler. And I fucking hate filler. I'd much rather have actual news, even if there's nothing really interesting going on, you know? And that's kind of where we start to lose touch, is where all of a sudden interesting isn't like facts anymore. It isn't something that is happening locally or nationally or internationally anymore. It's just nonsense. I don't care who the Kardashians are fucking dating or who they're marrying or how many kids they're having. I don't care who the new next American top model is or whoever's winning whatever the current, you know, American Idol spin-off, knockoff, recreation is. I don't care about any of that. I want to hear actual news. What's happening on the International Space Station? You know, what's going on in physics? Stuff that's important, that like makes sense in today's society. In a society that we are run, that relies so much on technology, we just have no information that gets reported. We hear a bunch of bullshit. People own news outlets so that they can share their point of view to people that are like-minded, or so they can manipulate people into thinking like them. And that's why there's such a big controversy on what kind of news is real news and fake news. So, while I believe that the internet is a fantastic source for information, and while I believe it is a great thing for many, many people, and it connects so many people, and it is probably the best invention of our time. The internet is going to continue to grow and continue to be amazing. And I believe it is amazing. I also believe that because of how freely information is shared and how easily it is manipulated, that it just makes it so that people aren't thinking as much anymore. You know, if you can go anywhere and you can wiki or Google anything and you could find answers at any given time, it's fantastic if you can utilize it properly. If you can't utilize it properly and you're just using it as a crutch, then it's stopping you from thinking. Basically, all I'm saying is that You know, the internet's great for what it is. It's just that you have to kind of think a little bit more about how you're using it and determine whether or not the things that you're looking for on the internet should really just be defaulted to whoever's opinion is of it. And that's the same in my case. Obviously I made this video about it, and obviously you have access to the internet, and obviously I could be wrong and you could think that I'm wrong. But I hope that at least I made you think about it a little bit here. So, with all that being said, internet's great. Maybe just don't take everything for, what you hear or what you see or what you read. Just think about it a little bit. It could definitely help. The internet is only going to get better with time that goes on. And of course, I'm on the internet, so maybe that makes it better, maybe it doesn't. Let me know. Please do like, share, and subscribe to these episodes. If you have any suggestions for future casts, by all means, let me know. And thanks again for watching. As always, that was 10 minutes perfectly wasted.